Carnab IV. Brick knows this place well. Too well. In particular, he knows the hidden truth of how this place is really run. Most people will never glimpse beyond the surface, seeing the shining buildings and the bustling traffic, all the trade, industry, and prosperity of the Dominion on full display. But Brick knows the truth. In the shadows, under the table, the smugglers and the criminals move under the Dominion's nose. He was one of them once. But now he is back, and is on a mission to escape that life, to cut his ties to that world. This is the first step in the process. All he has to do is outsmart a potential criminal mastermind. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of our journeys into the glittering skies. I am sorry to get into this, so we're not going to waste any time. I have already set up a character, I've established the world that we're going to be playing in, and so now we are ready to dive headfirst into this totally randomized solo RPG game. So let's jump right in. Who are we? Where are we at? Brikor Hafabri, our character. You can take a look at his sheet. We're using the Traveler's Tome rules mechanics. And this is our ability score spread. So he's definitely more clever, charming, and aware of his surroundings, able to read people, able to notice things and turn those to his advantage. So Brikor is definitely going to be leaning more into kind of the swindling and backhand dealing, a little bit of shady business himself perhaps, in order to get what he needs. We are a very base level character, tiefling male, with a couple of mechanical abilities that come with his background and heritage, as well as the path that he has chosen, which is the charlatan's way, kind of the bards, the artisans, the swindlers, and the smugglers. So he's going to rely on his charm to get him through most situations, as that is his main professional ability. We don't have any skills, but we do have a couple of assets, and with all of that mechanical talk out of the way, we are about to jump into the very first scene of our game. So where do we find ourselves in the glittering skies? The planet is known as Carnab IV. It is a bustling world, pretty heavily populated, and very often gets traffic from other systems to and from. Lots of shipping lanes. Basically take a detour to stop here at this place, this world of bustling cities and prosperous trade organizations setting up shop and conducting their business. Carnab IV also happens to be a very lucrative spot for various low-level criminals to operate out of, from the shadows and hiding camouflage with kind of fake business facades, trying to subvert the strict rules of the Dominion, the Scourdeck Dominion as it is known, which is the faction in control of this section of space. They are known to be very strict in their rules and have a heavy hand of authoritarian control over almost every aspect of the culture that manifests itself in the worlds that they lord over. And Carnab IV in particular is kind of just the main trading post, essentially, one of the major stops on the fringes of the Dominion, where ships will drop off cargo, pick up cargo on their way out into other faction space and be able to establish trade that way. We don't know the full history of our beloved character Brikor. We do know that he was indeed a criminal in this area, operating out of one of these kind of shady backdoor businesses, but we don't know exactly to what extent. We're going to probably evolve that and discover it as we go. So our tiefling friend Brikor Fabry and his crew of collection of misfits find themselves on this planet, and they do not know the exact identity of the client that they work for yet. All they know is that the organization they are associated with is called Jagwol Enterprises. Their contact with Jagwol has been very subtle and selective in the details provided to the crew about what it is that the company's goals really are. But the info that they were given is enough to get them hooked, and to let them know that Jagwol is no pushover startup. So this is a new corporation breaking into the market. They have some sort of technology that they are developing that should disrupt the industry in some capacity, though the details obviously were kept under wraps from our particular crew to help with the surprise element and making sure that no secrets get leaked. But they are going to be breaking into the market guns blazing with unprecedented technology, was their promise. So, what has this startup technology company asked our crew to do? The first job with this client will be to do some snooping into a tradesman known as Carnab IV. Karsten is in the business of real estate. At first that doesn't sound very exciting, until you learn that the blocks that he buys and sells are utilized by a variety of different merchants for some shady, under-the-table style business. Brick knows his name, he is familiar with the kind of people that Karsten deals with, and is not particularly keen on being recognized by him or anyone around him. There is a particular block that is supposed to be traded off in the very near future, perhaps within the same day that our crew is embarking on this journey. Brick and his team have limited time to secure the information on this transaction, transmit it to Jagwol for them to intercept. Get in, get the data, get out. Karsten is currently on Carnab IV, as we discussed, one of the major trade hubs of the Scourdak Dominion. And all they need to do is get close enough to one of the devices connected to Karsten's personal network and copy the details of the transaction. So, Carnab IV. The fourth planet from this system star. It is a lush and vibrant world. It's littered with very high-tech cities that build themselves up as opposed to out. They find that maintaining the natural resources of the surrounding areas benefits them greatly in being able to not only produce their own trade goods to sell to other clients and people outside of the Scourdak Dominion, but it also attracts a great deal of tourism. This place is very densely populated. Skyships are flying to and fro in between buildings, and then sky cruisers will transmit people in between cities, place to place. Very rarely you will see that private vessels will fly from city to city, but typically those are mostly owned by those of high esteem and a very lucrative lifestyle, those of them lucky enough or cunning enough to secure themselves a rather large amount of wealth. So it's not the common folk that have their own ships in this universe. It's not every day that somebody even can enlist the services of a vessel. For the most part, most people stick to the planet that they were born on. And this is what makes Brick's life, as well as those of his crew, quite unique. As there are not a whole broad selection of mercenaries, as they essentially have put themselves out into their sphere of influence, portraying themselves as. And it doesn't mean that they are the only ones, however. So there is potential that in whatever endeavors that they take on, there might be some competition that they may run into and have to encounter. But for this particular mission, we find ourselves in a particular city where this tradesman, this realtor, Karsten Brinfer, manages the trade and ownership and transfer of ownership between individuals who need places to tuck away things that they don't necessarily want to be seen, and conduct business that may or may not be legal in the eyes of the Scourdak Dominion. Karsten Brinfer is, we don't know a ton about him. All we do know is that he is clever enough to have maintained this business for a certain amount of time, so that he has become an established name in the criminal world. So how are we going to break in, find this information that is needed, and give that to the Jagwell Enterprises representative? Well, why don't we just dive right into the action? Setting the scene. This is the area that we find ourselves in currently. Brikor is kneeled down over this pack that he has, and he's kind of rifling through the top opening, searching through this bag that is basically filled with miscellaneous pieces of junk. It's just random bits and bobs, gears, other mechanical devices, just to add a nice bit of heft to the bag itself. He's kneeling down kind of on the fringes of this busy thoroughfare where people are going to and fro in between the various businesses that populate this plaza, this particular plaza of the city, one of the higher most levels of this particular superstructure that rises several miles from the ground up into the low atmosphere. The air is a little bit thinner up here, but it's still breathable without any, assisting apparatus. And the air is pristine. Everything about this whole place is classy, clean, and shining with the most pristine of prestige. It literally emits a sense of wealth and power and success. And this is the area that Karsten Brinfer is currently operating out of. One of these little locations within this plaza is actually one of the realty offices, we'll call it, that Brinfer uses to conduct his business and basically meet with clients, try to keep up the guise of having a legitimate enterprise. As these people are walking by back and forth, people of all different races, ethnicities, heritages, sizes, colors, these variety of people milling about to and fro. It's a very busy thoroughfare. And it's interesting the fact that there is such diversity on this level. Typically, you don't get to see as much of this when you get down to the lower levels, because that is where most people who spend their lives, their entire lives, living on Carnab IV. Carnab IV is the home world, one of the home worlds of the Elvish people. They are a little bit aloof, as they tend to have longer life cycles. They tend to outlast many of the other heritages, the other species that inhabit the verse. And in doing so, they get to see a variety of experiences and learn much more than any one particular individual typically would. As a result of this, the Elvish people tend to be proud and kind of enraptured in their own wisdom. It's almost to the point where it can seem degrading just talking to one as time goes on. But most of the elves actually happen to be on the lower levels, as they tend to compete with each other with more intense ferocity as well. And so the distribution of wealth is extremely askew. If you could imagine the 1%ers being basically a 0.01%, there's a very small handful of elves that control most of and command most of the wealth and the power within this society, this local society at least. And the rest pretty much serve as the grunt, the middle class workforce. So Brikor, waiting alongside this thoroughfare, sifting through his bag continuously, taps an earpiece, a very small, almost invisible earpiece tucked into his right ear. He says, "Checking in on team. Report." Then we hear the voice of Absol come over the communication device. It says, "You're in the clear. He's en route." He taps the device again and it says, "Devin, are you in position?" And a robotic voice responds. It says, "Ready, Captain." So Brikor turns his head and looks to his left. Through all the traffic and the people milling about, a couple of small floating robots pass in between individuals as they continue through the thoroughfare, basically personal assistants or even just carrying personal items for specific individuals who have the means of owning and maintaining such a thing. And he spots his target. There is one man who's a dwarf, kind of sidling through, trying to keep to the outskirts of the flow of people, kind of maintaining the very edges of the thoroughfare, moving as quickly as he can. It seems as though he doesn't necessarily want to be a part of all of this, but doesn't have much choice. You can kind of look and see in his eyes that he's not comfortable with crowds. And that is just what Brick is looking for. He looks back down into his bag and continues to rifle through, just sifting and turning all of these clanging bits of metal over in the bag, sorting and pretending to sort. Eventually, the dwarf begins to walk up behind Brick. And as this happens, Brick suddenly snaps the lid of the bag closed and begins to whip it around his body as if to sling it over his shoulder onto his back. But as he does so, the dwarven man happens to be in just the right spot for the bag to swing around and slam right into his head. Brick spins around and catches the man lying on his back on the ground, dazed, looking up at the sky. Brick kneels down and says, "Oh, I am so sorry, sir. I am so sorry. I did not see you there." So this is going to incite the very first roll of the game. So what are we trying to do here? What Brick wants to do is he wants to pretend as if it was actually a mistake. But really, Brick intended for this to happen. He is trying to get this man distracted long enough so that he can get something from him, something that he needs to proceed with the mission. So, with using his charm, his talent for persuading, deceiving, or coercing others into agreeing with your interests, we're going to make a check to see how successful Brick is at convincing this man that it was an honest mistake and he intends no ill will. So, his charm is a 12. This is one of his best stats. So we are going to roll 2d10s and then add up the values that we roll, compare it to his skill, and see if we get less than 12. And we do. With a 10 and a 1 on the dice, opposites of each other, we get an 11, which is just underneath Brick's 12 score. So that means that we are successful. However, this means that it's a weak hit, so there may be potential for a complication to arise in this situation. But let's first dig into how this plays out. So the dwarven man, is lying sprawled out on his back, looking dazed up into the sky. Brick kneels down and says, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there. Are you alright?" And begins to pull his arm up and help him out. The man is dazed enough so that he is not particularly paying any specific attention to Brick and is slightly out of it, trying to regain his senses. As this is happening, Devin, the robot that is on Brick's team, kind of uses his rather clunky movements to traverse through the thoroughfare and arrive at the scene. He kneels down to the dwarven man and says, "I saw the collision from across the way. Please, let me investigate you to make sure that you have not suffered any injury." And Devin begins to run a scan on this man's head, as Devin happens to be rather proficient in treating people with medical treatment. And so part of that would be being able to diagnose, and so that is what he is doing currently. He is trying to detect if this man has been concussed or any other sort of ailment that might set him back in his day. But at the same time, with his other hand, Devin is holding onto the wrist the opposite wrist of this dwarven man, where on his arm, wrapped around, is this almost like a Fallout Pip-Boy type device, but it is a personal terminal. This guy is obviously an agent of Karsten Brynfer. We don't know exactly who he is, we just know that he works for him and might have the keys that Brick needs to get access to Karsten's offices. And so that is what Devin is really trying to do here, is extract data from this dwarven man's personal terminal that will allow entry into Karsten Brynfer's offices. And Brick, on the opposite side of the dwarf, is just going way overboard with apologies and trying to keep this man's attention and on anything except what Devin is doing. And so he just continues to go on about, oh my goodness, I'm such a klutz, I should have looked before I did that. This bag, I just had all of my spare parts and just, yeah, totally got in your way. My fault entirely. And the dwarven man is trying to basically wave Brick away and just get, he just wants to be out of here and continue on his path. And we're going to see if any particular complications arise from the situation that we're trying to achieve here. So how we're going to do that, we have the Fate chart. In Mythic GME 2nd edition, we're going to roll some dice to determine the chances of there being a complication in this particular scene. As is a weak hit, it wasn't a guaranteed success. There may still be a chance, even though there was a hit, that we are successful but at a cost. So there's a chaos factor element that plays into the fate chart, and depending on your chaos rating, essentially, things are either more or less likely to go awry. So we start out kind of at the very center of the chart, chaos factor 5. It's on a scale of 1 to 9. And essentially, the odds of something, really being up to fate and turning sour are 50-50. So, what we're going to do is roll a d100 and compare it to the fate chart to see what answer we get. According to the Mythic GME rules, if you roll above the percent number, the probability that something happens, whatever question you ask, the answer will be either yes or no. And so we are asking, does this situation turn awry, and does a complication arise from what is being done here as we are extracting this information from this dwarf? Rolling above the threshold, which is currently 50 at 50%, means that it's a no. So at 75, there are no complications that arise out of this situation. Very lucky. If we were to roll in the extreme, such as, upper 90s or the single digits on this D100, that would yield an extreme result, which would confirm whatever question you are asking with its answer, either yes or no, and then carry it to the next level and say that and even more. But we got a 75, dead center of the no region. It is not an extreme no, so we proceed as normal. Eventually, the man gets his diagnosis from Devin. Devin explains to him, "You may be slightly concussed, but the effects should wear off within the next day or so. You are free to proceed with your day." And the dwarf kind of shoves Devin aside, just grunts, and kind of like gives Brick a look as he storms off, again skirting the very edge of the thoroughfare, trying to keep away from as many people as he can. Brick looks over to Devin, and Devin holds up his wrist to show a small terminal display that exists there, showing a 100% completed progress bar. Brick gives Devin a nod. They have what they need. And then it's at this point that Upsol, our elven intelligence officer, arrives at the scene as well. She comes up to Brick and says, "Okay, now I have the keys. Time to move on to the next step." Brick motions to her, looks to Devin, and says, "You stand watch. If anything goes awry, we may need you as our escape route." Devin kind of takes a post on the edge of the thoroughfare, kind of up against one of the walls in between locales in the plaza. And people keep on going back and forth. It is just a swirling mass of individuals going about their busy day, collecting things from the shops that are in the area and conducting other business that is perhaps less tangible, trading data or other such intangible amenities. There is one particular block in this plaza that Brick knows is Karsten's office. They head directly for it and head straight for the front door. As they approach, there is a man standing next to a terminal, and the man stops them at the door and says, "Access credentials, please." Brikor, having quickly scanned the data off of Devin's terminal onto his own, begins to upload the credentials to the terminal as a bright beam of light kind of shoots out from a source kind of at the very center of the terminal and scans the codes rolling across the viewpad screen on Brikor's wrist. As this is happening, I should really quickly take care of a mechanical aspect of what we are doing here. So, part of making these rolls in the first place is to make progress on these challenges. So the challenge that we are currently taking on is to discover the space merchant's trade secrets, this Karsten Brynfer. And with the successful roll and no complications being created as a result of what we attempted in trying to steal this information, we made progress on our track towards completing this task. This is a risky level, a risky tier task to take on. It's, as I've mentioned in other videos, challenging but not impossible for someone with Brick's knowledge and skill set. So, having completed one progress on the track for a risky tiered task, we get 2 boxes full along the track. Now, as this advances, there will be a timer aspect of this one, as there is a set time when the transaction is going to take place, and Brick needs to get in and get the information that he needs before that happens. So if we take too long in trying to accomplish our tasks and things go wrong so that we get delayed, the time may pass us by and we may arrive at our destination too late to be successful. So there is that added element of challenge presented here with the task that Brick finds himself undertaking at this moment. Back to scanning at the terminal. Brick looks at the man who is guarding this place, and the man kind of gives him a quizzical look. And he says, "Don't believe that I've seen you around here before. Are you one of Karsten's associates?" Brick kind of gives him a look and says, "Associates? Not quite the right word, more of an acquaintance. I am a new potential business partner, seeking an audience with Karsten himself, actually. And here, we are going to be making another charm check. Obviously, this is a little unusual for the way that Karsten's business is handled. He doesn't typically take face-to-face meetings on the daily, but perhaps we get lucky enough so that this guard will leave us for the time being. Perhaps we can convince this guard that this is a special case, that it's a little bit off the books, a little bit impromptu, but it's something that Karsten himself has requested that we speak with him. So we're going to roll our charm once again, and that is not good. That is a 16 in comparison to the 12 that we have as our skill. So that means that this would be a fail. Now, I do have 2 momentum currently, which would be good if I could have enough to bring us from 16 to 12. Unfortunately, I only have the 2, so I could bring the roll down to a 14, but that is still not a success. So, what are we going to do about this situation? Well, let us take a quick look at our abilities to see if there is anything here that can help us out. So, being that he is a tiefling, he gets +1 momentum on strong hits for spirit saving throws. We are not making a spirit saving throw. Having a criminal background, he can spend a momentum on a mind saving throw to reroll any one die. Again, this is not a saving throw. His path ability, possessing a natural talent for using words and charisma to achieve your goals, utilize Cunning Charm as your main combat ability. This is not combat. Conversational prowess and quick wit allow you to gain a -1 bonus to charm checks for persuading or deceiving others to cooperate with you. Now, this actually would be helpful, as we got a 16, we need a 12, so to get from 16 to 12, we can subtract 1 because we are attempting to deceive this person, so that'd be 15 that we end up with. But even still, 15 with the 2 momentum that we possess is just not enough to break us even, to make this a success. Because if we were able to meet 12, meet that number, then it would count as a success. So even the momentum and our abilities cannot get us past this barrier. So what does this look like? This means that this is going to take extra time for us to get past. So the timer progress track advances by 1, equal to the amount of progress that would be gained if it was a success. So basically, we are neck and neck with progress versus time in completing this task. and whether that'll be a success or a failure. So basically, Brick has to kind of take a little bit of extra time to persuade this guard that he is in fact a potential client from the nearby area, had just come into contact with Mr. Karsten, and that an impromptu face-to-face meeting had been set up kind of on the turn of a dime to quickly facilitate this and exchange some important information. Eventually, after the terminal on the wall scanning the credentials and accepting them is enough to convince the guard, but it delayed them to a point where they need to make sure that they can hurry themselves along to get the trade info before the transaction occurs. But Brick and Absol kind of giving the man standing outside the door a strange look before walking into the front doors. This place is rather empty. There are a lot of holographic displays that take up the entirety of all of the surrounding walls as they enter the main foyer area. And all of the walls are displaying different images of real estate, essentially. These blocks, these spaces within the superstructure that they currently inhabit that are available for sale. And there are only a few handful of people kind of milling in and out all around this room, essentially just low-level employees maintaining the office space, this welcoming area, essentially. At the very back, there is basically an energy barrier that it separates this space from the room beyond, which actually is a battery of elevators going up and down. This facility is much bigger inside than it looks outside. So this energy barrier separating these two areas of the interior of this chamber has a floating keypad at the very center, kind of at shoulder height. And so basically how this works is as Brikor and Absol slowly walk towards the keypad, they can see that several of the employees are utilizing it to give them small portways, little openings in the wall for them to pass through that quickly closes behind them as soon as they are through. So there is a personnel code that is needed in order to get beyond this. Basically, it's a foyer type of welcome center for the real estate quote-unquote business. And so let's check on our teammate Absol, who we brought along, as this would be kind of interesting to try out and see what happens. Absol has the intellect ability, so that would mean that she is proficient in recalling information, being able to connect linking ideas, draw investigative conclusions, follow clues. So she may be able to assist us here in trying to spot and remember the pattern that these employees are using to pass in between these two spaces. So if I go with using Absol's intellect ability, I will not be able to use my momentum on this roll. So technically statistically speaking, it would be smarter to roll against my intellect, Brick's intellect, which is 9, but only because then I would be able to implement the momentum if necessary in order to get a success. And I have 2 momentum currently with an ability score of 9 for intellect, so I would technically be able to get a success if I rolled an 11 or below. If I went with Absol's ability score, I would only get a success on a 9 or 10 or below. So it's only a difference of 1 point, but it is a difference, and it's significant when you look at the statistics and the probabilities that the 2d10 are characterized by. Let's go ahead and roll against Brick's intellect to see if he can't pull this off. We want an 11 or below. Okay, so we got a 9, and that is exactly Brick's intellect score, so we don't even need to use the momentum. So that saves us right there. So just barely, Brick is able to catch the pattern that one of the employees uses in order to pass through the energy barrier and into the elevator chamber. He quickly memorizes it, internalizes it, as he is striding through the room, and him and Absol are both receiving strange glances from the handful of individuals that are populating this space, but they don't even pay any mind. They continue focusing their attention directly forward with intent and purpose, and arrive at the energy barrier, where Brick quickly taps in the code on the holographic keypad at the center of the wall, and just like that, this person-sized opening reveals itself in the energy barrier, allowing him and Absol to quickly scoot right on through into the next chamber. So, that is another progress on their mission. They are slowly making their way in. So now, they find themselves in an elevator chamber. One of the elevators is currently open, as one of the employees has just stepped off of it. And so they scoot right on by and take it for themselves. Absol quickly scans the terminal on the inside of the elevator and is able to input a code to take them to their destination, which will get them close to Karsten Brynfer's personal quarters. So where do they emerge? I would like to randomize this a little bit just to get a feel for what they find and what floor they find themselves on. So I'm going to roll on the locations table in the Mythic GME to find out some inspiration for where they arrive. So we're going to do that by rolling a couple D100s. First one is a 20. Second one is a 38. So 20 is cute. And 38, fortunate. Cute and fortunate. So what does this look like? So this is where they emerge. As the elevator doors, this cylindrical tube with this round white platform, basically featureless, except for the hex pattern across the floor that kind of creates these tile-like shapes lifts them up several floors before the cylinder doors slide open around them, revealing a floor that is immaculately clean. The floor literally sparkles and shines, and in this space is some very strange cubes, structures, kind of floating about a half foot off the ground, and they're kind of lined up in rows and several columns as well. But each of them has one side open, revealing inside this kind of quaint living quarters. And it's almost as if these are kind of like guest rooms, and they all have a variety of different styles and architecture and sort of an atmospheric sense or feeling that is intending to create. Some of them have some red lighting. There's kind of dull red lighting that almost imitates like fire or lava, and some very dark toned furniture and furnishings, while other ones have lighter colors, almost as if it is a room on a ship that is sailing nearby a star. Everything is very bright and pale in coloration and tone. And there are a couple of individuals, not a ton, very select few, but people who are obviously not employees, but rather customers. And they are kind of perusing each of these little modular rooms that can be tacked on and added to whatever home structure that perhaps they already possess. And there is one employee that ends up approaching Brick and Absol and asks them, "Well, hello, are you here to peruse the modules, perhaps?" As this employee approaches asking this question, Absol immediately begins to stride over towards one of them and pretend to inspect. Meanwhile, Brick kind of intercepts this employee and says, "Well, actually, we just were about to do that, yes. We're looking for something a little bit more of the kind of a rustic sort of sense, a little bit more in touch with the nature that surrounds the city, as opposed to, feeling as if you were in the heart of the metropolis, you know what I mean? Bring a little bit of the outside inside." And basically, what Brick is trying to do is get this guy to escort him deeper into this facility. So what we're going to do here is roll diplomacy. So diplomacy, measuring a skill of conducting negotiations, bartering deals, or persuading information out of others. Now, persuading information out of others, we might be able to get a little bit of more insight of how we can get in touch with Karsten Brinfer himself by making this roll. We are going to use our diplomacy, which is a 10, so perfectly average. He's decent at this, but it's not his specialty. So let's see how this goes. Less than a 10, please. Ooh. Yes, that is a 5. So a 5 in comparison to a 10, that is meeting the halfway mark, 50% of our score. So that makes this a strong hit. That means it is quite successful and we get exactly what we're looking for out of this. So, this employee escorts Brick and Absol through the rows of these little modules, explaining, kind of cherry picking the ones that have more a rustic sense of atmosphere and feel to them. as they go along deeper and deeper, Brick notices that there is another elevator at the back of the room. Brick quickly interrupts the employee and says, "You know, I don't mean to be rude, but I appreciate your input and all of that. But I heard that Karsten, the man himself, happens to be on site. Is this true?" And the employee, kind of taken aback slightly, does a quick double take and replies, "Well, yes, actually, he is on site." And before he even gets a chance to go any further, Brick interjects again and says, I do have a appointed audience with this man. I would like to see him in person if possible, and perhaps maybe get his opinion on what he thinks might be applicable for our particular space." And the employee says, "Oh, you have an appointment." And Brick pulls up quickly the access data that had been pulled from the dwarf to prove the validity that Brick has access beyond what the typical per user / customer / associate would have. And upon seeing this, the employee directs Brick and Absol to the elevator battery at the back and says, "By all means, please let me know if you need anything else, but this should take you up to to Karsten's chambers. He should be waiting for you there." And so, with that, they stride right along to the back of the room and use the access code once more to get onto the elevator and ride up the next few floors. So that is 3 progress out of the 5 total that we need in order for this to be a success. We are almost there. We are very, very close. We're at the last steps of this mission being a success. And we're on time as well. We are got a good, solid lead on the time. So hopefully we can get some experience out of this. So what happens now? Let's take a look at the locations table and see what Absol and Brick find. So 87 and 41. 87 is a strange. 41 is frightening. Strange and frightening. Uh-oh. I wonder if an element of Rick's past is going to come to light this early on in the story. Strange and frightening. So I'm going to make a quick roll on the fate chart to answer a question that I have. Cast factor is still at 5. The scene has not resolved. Depending on how things go with this particular mission, the chaos factor can increase or decrease, depending on how in control things are. So, still at 5, a strange and frightening thing we find here as we emerge into the closest we can get, essentially, to Karsten's personal space. I guess I have a few questions. Is Karsten present to find us here? Yes or no? 96. Ooh, interesting. Okay. So on the fate chart, rolling a 96, that means this is an extreme no. Karsten is not here to greet us, or to face us, or to find us present here in this place. In fact, it is an extreme no. So that leads me to believe that perhaps Karsten wasn't here at all. Maybe. Okay, this leads me to my second question. Has someone from Brik's past made themselves present in Karsten's chambers? 88. 88 is a no. Okay. So Karsten is not here. No one else is here either. And maybe that is what is strange and frightening. The fact that they arrive, they take a look around, and that there's no one else in this area at all. And in fact, I'm going to have Brik make an awareness check to see. So this is a personal question of mine that will depend on Brik's ability to detect things that are off, and to be able to detect basically the things that he is searching out, the clues that he wants to find as to what is happening here. Awareness is 11, so we're going to roll the 2d10s and compare. What do we get? Oh boy, that's bad. Okay, so with a 16, we only have 2 momentum. That is not going to be enough to get us to 11. That is a miss. And what this looks like is Brik is spending a lot of time searching the area for clues. What is going on? Where is Karsten? Why is he not here? And the time passes on by. But despite all of the searching, Brik is not able to find anything as to what's going on. Absol patrols the room as well, looking at various consoles and seeing information about schedules, meetings, trade deals that are in drafting, calls that are needing to be made. There's a lot of personal information and business information kind of available on the terminals that litter this basically this kind of like circular room with a elevated platform in the middle, and this kind of round glass wall encircling this platform. And there's a door that is just barely visible, where a piece of the glass would slide to the side to allow access to anyone who was trying to get into the very personal space of Karsten Brentford himself. This is his office. On the outside, there are several terminals kind of lining the walls, kind of displaying similar information, but a little bit more generalized. But it is strange, and it's frightening, the fact that Karsten is not here and that these two find themselves alone. Absol and Brik exchange a look, and no words even need to be said, that there is a mutual understanding that this is wrong. Something's going on, but they don't know what. All they know is they need to act fast. So Brik and Absol get to work, and they both choose separate consoles to begin investigating. And what we're going to do is we are going to make a cleverness check. Cleverness, measuring your resourcefulness, problem solving, pattern recognition, crafting, engineering capabilities. Mostly we're going for the problem solving and pattern recognition. So we're trying to piece through all of these various bits of information and find what we are looking for exactly, and extract it somehow. So Brick is going to be using his cleverness to spot the identifiers that mark the specific transaction details that they are pursuing at this moment. So his cleverness is an 11. We have 2 momentum, so technically with a 13 or lower we will be able to get a success. So let's roll versus cleverness. Come on, baby. Oh no. This is very, very bad. So this is a 16, which is obviously far beyond our ability to draw a success from. But not only that, the dice match. And when the dice match, that is a critical result. If the dice match and it is below your score, that's a critical success. Unfortunately here, we have a match and it is above our score, which means this is a critical failure. Oh no. So what does this look like? It means that time is quickly running out on us, as all of a sudden, just as, this is how we're going to play it. The characters get what they want, but it comes at a cost. Because just as soon as Brick locates the transaction details, suddenly Absol spins around and looks to him and says, "A silent alarm has just gone off. They know we're here." This is trouble. This is bad. This is everything that Brick was trying to avoid. He needs to get this information onto his datapad and get out as soon as possible, because they are going to be in some deep trouble in a very short amount of time. So, what are we going to do now? So what we're going to do is we're going to make a mind saving throw for Brick. He has to react in this situation to a very dire situation, and he has no choice but to, under pressure, get this information off the terminal that he's looking at and into his personal transmitter. So he's making a mind saving throw, as this is mental fortitude, quick thinking capabilities. His score is a 10. Dead average. We have 2 momentum to spend. Let's see if we can pull a success out of this quickly spiraling out of control situation. Come on. Couldn't have been better timing. Could not have been better timing. That is a 3, which is a strong hit on the saving throw. So, like a flash, Brick knows exactly what he needs to do. He has been in this situation before, with pursuers hot on his heels, quickly descending on his location. He knows exactly the movements that need to be made in order to copy the data and save it onto his datapad. Absol puts a hand on his shoulder, coming up behind him, and says, "We need to leave now." And this is going to be the last bit of our mission here. We get a success, progress on our track, which brings us even with the timer as we advance the timer 2 ticks because of the critical failure. And in doing so, this entire mission, success or failure, hinges on one roll. If it's a success, we escape scot-free and we get the data out in time. If it's a failure, the timer runs out, the transaction takes place before we can get the information out to Jagwell, and we have failed our mission. So what roll are we making now? Now we need an escape route. And being that Devon is our very clever and wily robotic companion, we have set him outside to stand guard and provide support on the escape if needed, and it is time to call in that favor. Brick taps his ear, the communications piece, and says, "Devon, we need you to get us out of Karsten's personal chambers." There is a pause before Devon replies, "Yes, Captain, working on it now." We are going to make a roll using Devon's willpower of 10. We can get a 12 or below for this to be a success, and we are relying on Devon to get us out of this situation now. Oh my gosh. The numbers could not be more perfect. A 10 exactly. Now, that is a weak hit. That is just barely a success. But a success nonetheless. And our mission is completed. But not 100% just yet, because there may be a complication that arises out of this situation. I'm going to roll on the fate chart. 50-50 odds. Chaos factor 5. Will there be complications? Will there be repercussions from this situation? $88 is a no, because it's above 50. Let's see how this plays out. Brick and Absol quickly go tearing through the chambers towards the back, where they know there has to be some sort of secret entrance, some sort of secret passageway that they can use to manipulate their way out of and escape. And of course, finding on the back wall, there is a hidden panel that slides up upon approach. There is a keypad there, and Absol, quickly stepping up to the panel, begins to use her scanner to illuminate, essentially do an X-ray of the mechanics and show the wiring behind the buttons, the physical buttons that are set into the wall. In a second, there's jolts of energy jumping from her wrist into the panel, sending signals to and fro throughout the device, overriding it to allow them access through the hidden door that slides to the left, open a hallway leading out. Absol and Brick waste no time, then go charging down. They turn a corner and head up to another door that is sealed, locked again. This one seems to be leading out to a landing pad for some sort of aircraft. There is a keypad here as well. But before Bull can even have a chance to inspect it and intervene, the doors slide open, and Devon stands there on the other side. I have scrambled the surveillance imagery so that we will not be able to be detected upon our exit. Brick claps Devon on the shoulder, his metallic arm, and says, "You are a genius, my friend." Devon sends the information out via a transmitter that is built into his physical form as part of his construct being. And he turns to Brick and says, "Transmission has been sent. Our mission is complete." And just as that happens, suddenly a group of agents armed with energy weapons, these pistols that house a barrel up on the top with a blue glowing line striping down each side towards the front. There's probably 5 or 10 of them that appear out of hatches that open up from this area, the rooftop area that they find themselves on, and they surround our heroes, aiming the guns straight at them. Say, "On your knees, now! You've violated a secure area, and we're bringing you in for questioning." Now, these agents that have emerged onto this rooftop area appear as if they have the garb of official local law enforcement. However, Brick knows these are not actually law enforcement officers. These individuals are people who have ill will towards our group of heroes, and definitely are more criminally associated than they would seem. Brick, recognizing this and knowing this truth, slowly says to Devon, "Devon, deploy countermeasures." As this happens, almost immediately, before Rick can even finish his sentence, Devon throws a device from his hip that had been magnetically attached there onto the ground in between the two groups of people. As it makes contact, it springs apart, pieces of this mechanical device splitting and arranging themselves to fan out into the air slightly. And as the mechanical pieces expand and fan out, energy emanates from it and creates this force wall, this barrier of energy between the two groups. Energy blasts hit the wall mere milliseconds after it goes up, sending these motes of power splitting, fireworking into the air across the front of this energy barrier, but then hanging, suspended in space. These almost time-frozen fireworks of energy, glowing light, motes, arranged on the one side of this wall. Immediately after that, Brick, Devon, and Upsal go charging over the edge of the roof and dive down towards the alley behind the building. The force wall goes down, and it doesn't matter at this point because as Devon is descending, he grabs onto both Absol and Brick's arms, and using his built-in thrusters that are on the back sides of his legs, deadens the blow and softens their landing as they come down into the alley and tuck underneath one of the nearby awnings. It's already too late for the agents to catch up, even if they were to successfully get down and find our group. Devon has already distributed to each of our members these basically cloaks that they pull over themselves, and the light goes through the cloak as opposed to bouncing off, basically giving the effect of invisibility. The group of heroes eventually slowly makes their way, picking and meandering in between alleyways, to finally arrive at the landing pad where their ship resides. There, the group reunites with the rest of the crew. Tarov is the first to greet them on the landing ramp. He's kind of leaning up against one of the hydraulic cylinders that holds the ramp in position and pulls it back up when it's time to take off. He looks at the group and says, "So, how did it go?" Absol turns to him and says, "We're going to have to lay low for a while." Ikumar, who is standing at the top of the landing ramp, overhears this and says, "That good, huh?" Brik ascends the ramp into the belly of the ship, where there is a small cargo space that is currently vacant. But you could fit several small vehicles within this space alongside a rather small but significant sized load of cargo. He turns to the crew and says, "Look, the mission was a success. We might have been seen, but hopefully we weren't recognized by anyone in particular. I certainly didn't recognize specific individuals of the ones that we encountered, so we should be fine." He throws the bag back into the ship where Konath stands as the dwarf, catches the bag full of just random bits and bobs. Brik says, "Worked like a charm, bud. Go ahead and do what you need to do." Konath kind of grunts and is like, "I have to reorganize the drawers, put these back where they go." But something nags at the back of Brik's mind. Even though they were technically successful, they got what they needed, they got out, and he is confident that there aren't going to be immediate ramifications for what he's done. But the fact that Karsten, the man who owned the place, the man who was supposedly in his quarters, present, conducting some sort of business, wasn't there when they arrived. It just strikes him as odd. Perhaps there's any number of excuses that this could cover. Maybe he was taking a restroom break while they happened to be in the room. Maybe he stepped out to grab some food. Maybe he was meeting someone else, where it's an actual valid meeting face to face, and he just didn't happen to be in the office at that time. But still, something nags at the back of his mind. He feels like he should have seen Karsten. He should have been there.